Okay, good morning, everyone. It has been a long morning, trust me. Okay, I think yesterday we started discussing SS 700 and we were done with the old format and the revised format. Today we're going to start with SS 705. We'll understand the types of modifications, when does a modification arise, and how do we identify which kind of modification should come under what circumstances. So do one thing, in your notebooks, give a first setting SA 705. In your notebooks, your first setting SA 705. SA 705. Modification to the auditor's opinion. Modification to the auditor's opinion. SA 705. Modification to the auditor's opinion. Modification to the auditor's opinion. First of all, how many types of modifications do we have? 3. If you remember, qualified, adverse, and disclaimer. So write down number A, types of modifications. Under 705, number A, types of modifications. Types of modifications. Under that, write down number 1, qualified opinion. Under that, write down number 1, qualified opinion. Number 2, adverse opinion. Qualified. Number 2, adverse. And number 3, disclaimer of opinion. And number 3, disclaimer of opinion. So these are 3 broader types of modifications we have. Now, before we understand what is qualified opinion, what is adverse, and what is disclaimer, let's try to recall once again. When do we actually arrive at the modified opinion? If you remember, yesterday in the end I discussed, there are 2 situations or 2 circumstances when auditor arrives at a modified opinion. Do you remember those circumstances? Either you come across a material misstatement, or you are unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence that indicates that there can be possible misstatements. So do one thing, write down number 2, circumstances when a modification to the auditor's opinion is required. Circumstances when a modification to the auditor's opinion is required. When a modification to the auditor's opinion is required. There are 2 circumstances. Write down number A. Write down number A. When auditor concludes, based on his audit evidences obtained, when auditor concludes based on his audit evidences obtained, that the financial statements are not free from material misstatements. That the financial statements are not free from material misstatements. Are not free from material misstatements. And number B, when auditor is unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences, when auditor is unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences to conclude that the financial statements are free from material misstatements. To conclude that the financial statements are free from material misstatements. We discussed these 2 points yesterday also. We have repeated the same thing. It's simple. First situation, as an auditor, you perform audit procedures, you obtain evidences. After evaluating those evidences, you conclude that there are material misstatements. If you still remember the example we discussed yesterday for SpiceJet, they did not make a provision of 74 million. Was that a misstatement? Yes. You identified those misstatements, and in your belief, in your judgment, now the financial statements are not free from material misstatements. That is when you go towards a modified opinion. Situation number 2, which is quite rare, is when you are unable to obtain evidences. We will discuss about that situation today, 2-3 instances. But situation number 2 is more extreme, when you're unable to obtain evidences at all. So I cannot even conclude whether it is free from material misstatement or not. So taking conventional point of view in picture, since evidences itself is not available, I'm going to assume that there can be possible misstatements. There can be possible misstatements. We are going to discuss 2 words again and again today. Number 1, either you come across a misstatement or you believe that there can be a possible misstatement. In these 2 situations, we go towards the modified opinion. You can do one thing with that point number B, whatever you have written. You remember that point number B, what you have written? In brackets, you can use the word possible misstatement. You should always remember this word. That point number B represents possible misstatements. Since there is no evidences available, you cannot really predict whether there is a misstatement or not. So you're going to assume that there can be possible misstatements. Do you understand these 2 situations? So we have 705. How many types of modifications? 3. Qualified, adverse, and disclaimer. So when do we come across to modified opinion? 2 situations. We have discussed that in detail. Now comes the most important part. How do we decide which modification should come under what circumstances? Do you know the logic? How do we decide we should go towards the qualified, we should go towards the adverse or disclaimer? Anyone? How do we decide between adverse, qualified, and disclaimer? Pervasiveness. Any other logic? Materiality. Okay. If it is, tell me, there is a misstatement which is not material. If there is a misstatement which is not material, which kind of modification will you give? If there is a misstatement which is not material, which kind of modification will you give? Useless fellows, you will not give modifications at all. If it is not a material misstatement, why will you give a modification? Look at the first word. Right? See the first definition. Circumstances number A. When you come across a misstatement which is assumed to be material in nature. If you remember yesterday I told you this word. Either material individually or in aggregate. So either a single misstatement is material or multiple misstatements collectively are material. They have to be a material misstatement. Without a material misstatement, we don't go towards 705. Tell me one thing. There will not be any misstatement in any company. It's not possible. For example, stationary expenses, there can be a problem. Any petty expenses, there can be a misstatement. Misstatement can be any mistake. It can be a 5 rupee mistake. It can be 10 rupee mistake also. So there will be misstatements. We are not concerned about normal misstatements. We are concerned about material misstatements. So remember, if there is a misstatement which is not material in nature, you will not give a modified opinion. You will give a clean opinion. You will give a clean opinion. Only when there is a material misstatement or a possible material misstatement, then only we go towards 705, that is modified opinion. Do you understand that? Yes or no? Yes or no? Can you proceed? So now, how do we decide which kind of modification is appropriate under what circumstances? It depends upon 2 situations. Do one thing, in your notebooks, give a next heading. So point number 1, your types of modification done. Number 2, circumstances done. Write down number 3, determining which modification is appropriate. Determining which modification is appropriate. This is your heading number 3 under 705. Determining which modification is appropriate under what circumstances. Determining which modification is appropriate under what circumstances. Now, how do we determine that? That is when we come to discussion of a table. I'm sure majority of you would have seen this table for sure. At least once in a while. If not, don't worry, we'll discuss that in detail today. Do one thing, we'll make a table like this, give the first heading, nature of matter. It's going to be a table where we'll have 3 columns. We need 3 columns. In the first column, give a heading, nature of matters giving rise to modification. First column heading will be nature of matters giving rise to modification. First column heading will be nature of matters giving rise to modification. In second column, write down material but not pervasive. In second column, write down material but not pervasive. The first one was nature of matter giving rise to modification. Second column, the heading is material but not pervasive. In third column, write down material as well as pervasive. In third column, write down material as well as pervasive. The second column was material but not pervasive. Third column is material as well as pervasive. Now understand, there are 2 matters or 2 situations or 2 circumstances when we arrive at a modified opinion. You remember those matters we just discussed in point number 2? Your situation number A and B. So under nature of matters, the same 2 points will come. Do one thing, under nature of matters, write down point number A. Under nature of matters, write down point number A. When financial statements, under nature of matters, point number A. When financial statements are materially misstated. When financial statements are materially misstated. When financial statements are materially misstated. Leave a line, one blank line, and write down point number B. This was number A under nature of matter. Under nature of matter, point number B. When auditor is unable to obtain, when auditor is unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences. When auditor is unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences. When auditor is unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences. Can I say these 2 matters are same as the circumstances we discussed above? So these are the only 2 situations when we will have a modification. Now you will realize, if I look at the table carefully, the only difference between qualified, adverse and disclaimer is, there is a material word both the ways, but either here it is not pervasive and here it is pervasive. So if we understand the word pervasive, we may be able to understand the table. Listen to me carefully. 705, teaching the word pervasive is very, very difficult because it's subjective. Even with the definition of the word pervasive, you'll realize they will use the word in auditor's judgment. You don't have any judgment. I'm being realistic. Right now, your experience is pretty less comparatively. So when you spend 5 years, 7 years, 10 years in the auditing profession, that's when your real, judgment will develop overall. So I'm trying to say, I'm going to try with the help of some instances to give you an understanding of pervasive. The real understanding of pervasive will come only with your personal, professional experience, and that will come with time. Let's start with the word pervasive first. Do one thing, leave this table, leave 2-3 lines, give a note number 1. Let's define a word. Note number 1. We will finish this table, don't worry. We'll come back to this table. Write down note number 1 below this table. Definition of pervasive. Below this table, write down note number 1. Definition of pervasive. Definition of pervasive. Do you know the definition of pervasive? Can anyone tell me how do we decide the word pervasive in auditing? Yes. Long-term effect which can have a going concern kind of scenario impact. Okay. Anyone else? Sorry? The impact is not on one area but on the entire financial statement. Okay. So he's trying to say the pervasive effect is not going to be on one part of the financial statement but on the entire financial statement. Not bad. Anyone else? Is this word actually defined in the essay? Is this word defined? No. If you do, I don't understand whether it is yes or no. Either you need to say yes or no. No means nothing. Is this word pervasive defined anywhere? Yes, it is. A very small definition. So after every essay, there is a logical summary wherever I believe it's important. And after summary, I've given a heading called other relevant concepts. It will include all important definitions, all important concepts which can be very important from exam point of view. Now this is definition of pervasive. Now there are two ways. One way is I trouble you. I ask you to read this. Then I trouble you more by asking questions. But today I'm not interested. Today I would talk about the pervasive directly. Should I directly start discussing? Or should I give you time to read? I understand you guys don't want to respond. You're like, do whatever you feel like. Just finish this. Let's go to the word pervasive definition. Discuss with me. This is a very interesting word. We will use the word pervasive in audit only and only when we are, thinking about the word misstatement. So only in the context of misstatement, whenever you are thinking about a misstatement, whenever you are evaluating a misstatement, think about the word pervasive. There is no other situation where we use the word pervasive in audit. So in audit, this will be used only and only in the context of a word misstatement. When I use the word misstatement, it includes misstatement or a possible misstatement. It includes a misstatement or a possible. Now you really know well what is a misstatement and what is a possible misstatement. Situation number one, you have evidences. You conclude that there is a misstatement. Situation number two, there is no evidences, but you believe that there can be misstatements. So you understand these two words. Only in the context of misstatement, we use the word pervasive. They say, when you want to evaluate, what do you want to evaluate? The effect. When you want to evaluate the effect or possible effect, again I'm using two words. When I want to evaluate the effect or possible effect of what, sir? Misstatements or possible misstatements. Sir, effect on what, sir? Effect on financial statements. So when you come across a misstatement or you believe that there can be a misstatement, you should evaluate what is the impact of this misstatement on financial statement. To evaluate that impact, we have given you the word pervasive. So sir, it's clear. Pervasive is used only in the context of misstatement. When I'm going to evaluate, what I'm going to evaluate? The effect or possible effect. Sir, effect or possible effect of what, sir? Of misstatements or possible misstatements. On what, sir? On financial misstatements. So for example, I come across a mistake related to provisioning, or let's say for example, non-compliance of an accounting standard, or let's say non-compliance of a accounting standard. For example, inventory valuation. Can there be overvaluation or undervaluation? So I need to know the amount of overvaluation or the amount of undervaluation, and I will compare that amount with the entire financial statements and actually see whether this amount is a material amount or not. So remember, pervasive is used only and only in the context of misstatements to evaluate what, sir? Effect or possible effect of what, sir? Misstatements on financial statements. Now, sir, how do we decide whether this effect is pervasive or not? For that, we have three situations. Do one thing, whatever we have discussed, write this down. More you write, better you will understand. Definition of pervasive, under that write down. This is used only in the, under definition of pervasive, write down. This is used only in the context of, this is used only in the context of misstatements. Used in the context of misstatements. To describe context of misstatements, to describe the effect or possible effect, to describe the effect or possible effect of a misstatement or possible misstatement of a misstatement or possible misstatement on the financial statements. On the financial statements. At least by reading this, are you sure why do we have pervasive? This word is given to you only in the context of misstatements. What are you trying to understand? The effect or possible effect of these misstatements on financial statements. Only under this situation, you will think about the word pervasive in audit. Now, what really pervasive means, we will discuss ahead. Right now, why pervasive and what is the use of pervasive? Is that clear to you? Is that clear to you? Can we go ahead and discuss when does a misstatement becomes a pervasive misstatement? Let's understand that. There are three situations. Understand this carefully. If in auditor's judgment, the effect or possible effect, if in auditor's judgment, the effect or possible effect of a misstatement will not only impact one area of financial statement, it will impact multiple parts of financial statements. For example, when I say multiple account balances or elements of a financial statement, I mean when I talk about balance sheet, in balance sheet, the effect is going to be on current assets, non-current assets, maybe on current liabilities also, maybe on non-current liabilities. Am I talking about a fraud basically? Tell me one thing. Have you heard types of frauds? C intermediate. Types of frauds. How many types of frauds do we have as per SA 240? There's a SA 240 on frauds. How many types of frauds do we have? Okay, forget about how many. Tell me what types you know. There are two types. One is called as fraudulent financial reporting, and second is called as misappropriation of assets. Now you'll say, yeah, fraudulent financial reporting, and number two is misappropriation of assets. The first category, fraudulent financial reporting, that means it includes your manipulation of accounts. It includes your manipulation of accounts. Can I say it's a management category fraud where you are altering the entire financial statements? And tell me one thing, as a management, when I want to manipulate my financial statement, will I manipulate only one area? If I manipulate only one area, anyone will be able to identify within a fraction of a second. Like the variances, for example, sales 100, payroll expenses 10 rupees. Next year also, sales 100, payroll expenses 50. Is it possible? No. You will be able to identify the variance within 1 second and you will tell them there is something wrong with the payroll expenses. Yes or no? So when you think about manipulation of accounts or financial statements, this is a management category fraud. The impact will not be in one area. For this, you will manipulate sales. You will manipulate your inventory balance. You will manipulate your receivables balance. You will manipulate your payroll expenses. You will manipulate everything. Then only the manipulation will make sense. Are you getting my point? Remember that fraud is done by very smart people. Fraud is not done by random average people. This is very sophisticatedly managed, very carefully designed by top level management, bringing a lot of people together. They have a vision in place. They know really well what they want to project. They actually project those numbers 100 times before actually altering those numbers. They will know really well how will fraud look like. What will auditor ask? What will I answer? How he or she should not be able to identify this. Fraud is not an easy job. Do you think pulling off a fraud of 5,000-7,000 crore rupees is easy? No. You have to convince so many people. You have to collude. Do you know the word collude? Like bringing people together. And then you all come together for one single objective. It's not an easy job. So when I say the fraud situation, it's going to impact multiple parts of financial statement. So listen to me carefully. I come across a misstatement. This misstatement does not impact only one area. This impacts multiple areas of financial statement. Can I say it looks to be pervasive in nature? See, what is pervasive? Pervasive means something which doesn't stay at one place, which spreads. Something which is very draconian in nature. For example, something which will not have a very short-term impact, which will have a very long-term impact, which will impact a lot of areas of financial statement. Or you can say the majority part of financial statements. I'll give you another example. You know Satyam? There was a mini Satyam after Satyam. You don't know about this, I'm sure. There's a company called Ricoh India, RICOH. When you get time, search. There's a company called Ricoh India, RICOH. Another listed company. But the problem was the balance sheet total amount was 1,000 crore rupees. If the balance sheet itself is 1,000 crore, in certain the fraud was 14,000 crore. Are you getting my point? The balance sheet value of Rico India itself is 1,000 crore. And do you know the amount of fraud involved? Somewhere around 950 crores. If my balance sheet is 1,000 and I say manipulation of 950 crores, that means there's a fraud left, right, center, everywhere. Whether it is pervasive or I don't even have to think. It has to be pervasive in nature. Are you getting my point? So when I say the effect of a possible misstatement or a misstatement is not on one area, but on multiple elements of financial statement. Rico India, exactly same thing happened. So there is a Rico company, parent company from Japan. Do you know, you take pictures in a camera? That film camera, if you remember, Kodak film cameras, once upon a time, Fuji films you would have heard of. Rico is in the same kind of business from Japan, a very big company. They have a subsidiary in India. Just imagine the subsidiary company had a loan of some X, I don't remember the exact number, balance sheet total 1,000 crore. Loan from a parent company, some 400, 500 crores. Now, when you take a loan, there has to be a purpose. There was no reason to take a loan. Parent company had money, but took money. That doesn't give me a good picture. Are you getting my point? Because you are taking a loan from a parent company of which is half your balance sheet. You need to have a realistic reason behind taking such a huge amount of loan. I'm trying to say such manipulations can be visible. And when I say the manipulation is not going to impact one area, you take a loan, you take that hit, you're going to pay interest payment also over that. You will have other related party transaction. It is going to impact multiple areas. So when I say the effect of a misstatement is not confined to one account balance, not confined to one element, but it is impacting multiple parts of my financial statements, I can conclude this kind of misstatement looks to be pervasive in nature. This kind of misstatement looks to be pervasive in nature. Do you understand at least one situation? There are 3 such situations, but this is just one of them. Do one thing in your notebooks, write down. You have given the basic understanding of pervasive. Now, under the definition of pervasive, point number 2. The first was the introduction kind of part. Now, write down point number 2. If in auditor's judgment, the effects or possible effects, if in auditor's judgment, the effects or possible effects of misstatements, if in auditor's judgment, the effects or possible effects of misstatements fulfills any of the following criteria, then it should be considered as pervasive. Fulfills any of the following criteria, then it should be considered as pervasive. Should be considered as pervasive. Now there are 3 criteria. Number 1, under this criteria number 1, we have written any of the following criteria. So which is this is the first criteria, right? On number 1. If the effects or possible effects, are not confined, to a specific element, or account balance, of financial statement, That's it. Read this point carefully now. I'm saying the effect or possible effect is not confined to a particular element or account balance. That means the impact will be on multiple elements. It will be on multiple account balances. Can I say in this category, I would say this misstatement looks to be of pervasive in nature. See, pervasive has 3 criteria. If you fall into any of the criteria, as the auditor, my judgment will tell me that this looks to be pervasive in nature. And if it is pervasive, which modification, that we'll discuss later on. Right now, understanding the word pervasive is important. After you understand the word pervasive, the type of modification you will understand very, very easily. Once again, if in my judgment, the effect or possible effect is not confined, the most common example for this is going to be manipulation of accounts or any intentional act by management where they want to, result into fraudulent financial reporting, that category of fraud. That is the most commonly used situation under number A, because it's not going to impact one area, it's going to impact multiple areas or elements of financial statements. Do you understand point number A? Can I say this criteria is a very common criteria? Either you will identify this or it will not be there. It's a very rare situation. You should be able to understand this carefully. Is point number A clear to you? The problem is going to be point number B. If A is done, can I move on to point number B? Write down number B. Criteria number 2. If the effect or possible effect, if the effect or possible effect is confined, if the effect or possible effect is confined to a particular account balance, if the effect or possible effect is confined to a particular account balance, or element, of financial statements, but that element represents or could represent a substantial portion, of financial statement, Read point number B carefully and tell me, is there a difference between point number A and B? This is the most toughest part to really understand. Read point number B once again. See, in point number A, I was saying the effect is not going to be on one area. The effect is going to be on multiple areas or multiple elements. Sir, we understand that is pervasive. In number B, you are saying the effect or possible effect is confined to a particular account balance. Means there is a misstatement or a possible misstatement in one particular area, in one particular element. But still I'm saying it can be pervasive. It depends upon how much portion of financial statement it represents. For example, assume a situation. Company's total balance sheet value, 1,000 crore. In the current year, they go for an expansion, that means capitalization of assets. If it's a manufacturing company, the current balance sheet value is 1,000 crore. They go for, aggressive expansion. They go for aggressive capitalization of new assets to increase their operating capacity. And let's say they spend 500 crore rupees on a new technology which will help them in, expanding their operating capacity to a different level altogether. I've spent 50% of my overall balance sheet value on a new technology. And I say, after the acquisition of technology, something takes place in the global world, and because of that, this technology becomes obsolete, or this technology is not going to provide me that much economic benefit which I assumed it to provide me. That means I'm trying to say I bought an asset worth 50% of my balance sheet. It is possible. Sometimes it's not the machinery, it's the company you acquire. One company can acquire another company, and you can acquire a 50% value of your net worth of another company. That means I acquired a company worth 50% of my own value. It's possible. And if I do that, and that acquisition goes wrong, What if that acquisition valuation is not appropriate? What if the accounting perspective is wrong? Something is wrong in one particular area, one particular element, one particular account balance, but it represents a very important amount of my financial statement. See, do not be under this impression that if it is pervasive, that means the effect has to be on multiple areas. It's not like this. The effect can be on one area also, and that one area can also represent a substantial part of financial statement. A lot of companies balance sheets, that is why they say diversification is important. Why it is important? Because if you are heavily relying on one business, you heavily invest in one business, and if something goes wrong in that business, you're out of business. For example, Kodak. Kodak, KODK, which used to make cameras. They were out of business. Cameras and the films of cameras. They had more than 90% market share, but they were out of business as soon as digital cameras enter. So can I say, sometimes your balance sheet's one important part may become a problematic situation. Now listen to me carefully. If there is a going concern problem in business because of change in circumstances, I understand. But if I say you acquired a technology, there is a impairment loss, you are not recognizing that impairment loss. I say you bought a technology worth 500 crore. It is not going to give you future economic benefit more than 100 crore. I want you to write off 400 crores. But you don't want to write off, because if you write off 400 crores, the bottom line is going to get impacted very heavily. The profitability will become a huge loss in one single year. You don't want the market to know this. That's why you don't want to charge the impairment loss. Can I say it's a misstatement according to me? And this misstatement is having a huge impact on the entire financial statement. Because it's simple, yaar. I'm saying the balance sheet is 1,000 crore. You made it 1,500 crores, but I believe it should not be 1,500, because the asset value, what you recognize as 500, is actually worth 100. 400 is loss as an impairment loss situation. You don't want to recognize that. You don't want to take that hit on your P&L. Are you getting my point? If you take that hit, it's going to impact you very, very badly on the bottom line. So some situations where the impact is on one area, but that area can also represent a substantial portion of financial statement. Joint ventures, companies sometimes in construction business, to get a new contract. Like for example, let's say my existing revenue has been 1,000 crore. I want to apply for a airport construction, which requires, working capital requirement itself of 2-3,000 crore. My total valuation today has been 1,000 crore for years. I am saying I want to apply for a tender which will require a working capital of 3,000 crore, and the tender is worth 10,000 crore. For example, I'm going to give you an example of a company, not the actual joint venture, but just a company example. GVK? You will understand this because you're from Hyderabad. When I give this example in Pune, it's a little challenging. They're like GVK, I don't know. You will definitely know, I'm sure about this. They are into construction of airports. It's very, if I'm not wrong, Hyderabad airport. Yes or no? GMR. GMR. So, what is GVK doing? GVK is into malls and all. Roads and malls. Okay. I need to find out. GMR. Okay. So, I think even the Bombay airport was constructed by them. T2 airport. So, when I construct an airport worth 10-12,000 crore rupees, I sometimes enter into a joint venture to show my capability and eligibility that I can take up such a huge contract. When I enter into such joint ventures and I create a separate entity altogether, and in that separate entity, that joint venture has a valuation of 90 to 95%. And if there is something wrong in the valuation of that joint venture, I'm trying to say that impact on one area, that one investment can actually be a substantial part of your financial statement. It is possible that sometimes there is a mistake in one element or one account balance of financial statement, one investment going wrong, one acquisition of an asset going wrong, and that asset which went wrong, you don't want to recognize that impairment loss. That impact is although on one area, but that one area can be a very important part of your entire financial statement. Still, that category of misstatement will be called as pervasive category as per point number B. Read point number A and B once again. Is it clear to you? Done. Okay, I still believe the Bombay airport. I've seen the GVK tag. I'll have to recollect it. But because as soon as I entered, I'll tell you why. What caught my attention? Everywhere in the airport, rather than Airport Authority of India, I saw more advertising by GVK. Like on the trolley, there was GVK. If I'm not wrong, if it's GVK, then I'm talking about, because I saw that everywhere. Like you enter the airport and on the right side you see a huge GVK hoarding everywhere. So because that company was the core constructor, I think according to me, it may be either GVK or GMR. I remember GVK at least at Bombay airport specifically, maybe Mumbai GVK. Yeah, because that's what I remember specifically at least, because that was T2 airport and they made worth 12,000 crore rupees. Airport construction worth 12,000 crore rupees. Do you know PPP, public private partnerships? So basically the public expenditure spent through a private hand. So GVK was the entity, they gave the contract to construct the airport, run it for certain years, and after that you have to surrender to the airport authority. For those certain years, GVK collects those taxes on tickets what we pay. All those taxes are basically part of the revenue for GVK. There's a contract between Airport Authority of India and the company who constructs those airports. We'll discuss this in detail. There is something called as, due diligence, investigation and all. There is a word called due diligence. That's a separate engagement. We'll discuss those types of engagements. That will come in a chapter. That will be one of the examples. Doesn't matter. Right now, do you understand point number A and B? The third one is more interesting. See, A is impact on multiple areas. B is impact on one area, but that one area represents an important portion of financial statement. The third one is regarding the word disclosure. If you remember, day one, we talked about the word true and fair. Remember the word true and fair? And I told you in true and fair, there are three important parts. Compliance of relevant cap, compliance of applicable laws and regulations, and number three was disclosure requirements. Assume a situation. Significant accounting policies of a company. Company doesn't disclose a significant accounting policy, or they don't disclose a change in significant accounting policy. Can I say this will have a significant impact on my user of financial statements? Non-disclosure of such important policies will definitely have a huge impact. For example, how do we record a revenue? Revenue recognition is not mentioned in your significant accounting policy. Your acquisition of asset policy is not mentioned. Your amortization depreciation policy is not mentioned. That means how will my user get to know how do you really account? This is something really significant. So non-disclosure is also a misstatement. Non-disclosure is also a misstatement, and that misstatement can be pervasive also. It depends upon what you did not disclose, how much you did not disclose, and why you did not disclose. Whenever there's a non-disclosure, the first question is why there is non-disclosure. You ask the management why you have not made this disclosure. They give you a reason. Then you question, is that a justifiable reason or not? For example, for significant accounting policies, there will not be any justifiable reason. If there is a change or if there is something which is significant accounting policy, you should make a disclosure. You cannot give any justifiable reason for not disclosing this. So, why non-disclosure? Understand the justifiable part and then consider that this kind of non-disclosure, how it can impact my users. If it is something which is fundamental to my users, revenue, fundamental to my users, fixed assets, fundamental to my users. If you don't make such a disclosure, I will consider them as pervasive in nature. So the third point is going to be on disclosure. Write down point number C. Write down point number C. In relation to disclosures, when there is a non-disclosure, which is fundamental, when there is a non-disclosure which is fundamental, when there is a non-disclosure which is fundamental to the user's understanding, which is fundamental to the user's understanding, fundamental to the user's understanding of financial statements, fundamental to the user's understanding of financial statements, then such non-disclosures should also be, considered as pervasive. Such non-disclosures should also be considered as pervasive. such non-disclosures should also be considered as pervasive. For example, significant accounting policies. For example, significant accounting policies. For example, significant accounting policies. Tell me one thing. For a misstatement or a possible misstatement to be pervasive, for a misstatement or a possible misstatement to be pervasive, do you need to comply with all three criterias? You have to comply with any of these criterias. If you comply or fall under any of the criteria, such misstatement or possible misstatement should be considered as pervasive. Now tell me, is pervasive word clear to you? There should not be any misconception that it has to impact multiple areas. Yes, that is an important point. It can although impact one area and still be pervasive because it may be a substantial part of entire financial statement. Also, people have a lot of misconception that disclosures can never be pervasive. It is not like that. Some fundamental disclosures which should be there, which are essential part of my financial statements, if they are not disclosed properly, then even that can be considered as pervasive in nature. Remember, for disclosure also we have a criteria. For one element also we have a criteria, and definitely there's a criteria for multiple elements or account balances. Then let there be any question as MCQ. You know, I challenge them. I believe if you understand the definition so well, now let them ask a question. You cannot go wrong, because if you know these three criterias, they will play with one of the criteria only. In the question, they have to play with one of the criteria only. They'll give you a situation, this impacts one area, but that one area has a substantial impact on financial statements. Is it pervasive or not? You can identify that, because you know that there is a criteria regarding the same. Is pervasive word clear to you? Okay, when you will get the notes, you will get time and you can read the definition and you will understand. The definition what I give you is a quite simple one in comparison to what they've given, although I have not compromised on the terminology. I've used the same terminology, but still the frame of reference has been given to you to understand this even in a simple words. Are we good? Any doubt to anyone? Let's go back to the table now. Now, in this table, can we see two situations when we have modifications? What was situation number A? Go back to the table. Read nature of matter under that number A. When financial statements are materially misstated. Now the question is, the misstatement has to be material. That is why we are in 705. If the misstatement was not material, we will not go to 705 at all. It has to be a material misstatement to arrive at 705. So, sir, we understand material word is common in column 2 and 3, but the only differentiating factor is pervasive. So, listen to me carefully. Now, I try to understand. When you give a clean opinion, what is your language of opinion? When you give a clean opinion, what is your language of opinion? Remember, in our opinion, to the best of our information. Do you know this? Let's look at one example. See, in our opinion and to the best of our information and explanation given to us, the financial statements gives the information which is required by the relevant act, that is Companies Act, and give a true and fair view. Can I say the language is clear? In our opinion, look at this line. This is the best line. Okay. At a final level, I don't have to talk about this more, but you understand how diplomatic we are when we are writing the opinion. In our opinion, first of all, but it depends upon the information and explanation given to us. So if you have not given the information, I'm not responsible. If I've asked for the question, if you have not explained me properly, still I'm not responsible. Yes, I'm not saying directly that auditor will not be responsible. It will depend what kind of questions I asked, how much I tried to understand that matter, how much management tried to hide that matter. If I have to prove that if I did not come across something, because maybe management tried to hide something from me, only if I'm able to prove that, then only court of law will relieve me. Otherwise, even I will be considered as a responsible person. So the language plays a very, very important role. But you will realize in the clean opinion, our language is the financial statement gives true and fair. In the clean opinion, the language is financial statement gives true and fair. Let me show you the language of A qualified opinion. Let me show you the language of a qualified opinion. Look at this language. Is there a difference in the language of qualified opinion, or is it same? Will there be any difference? Has to be. In our opinion, and to the best of our information and explanation given to us. But can you see a word except? So, in case of qualified opinion, I say everything is true and fair except. See, in clean opinion, I said everything is true and fair. In qualified, I'm saying everything is true and fair except for certain matters. And those matters will be disclosed where? In the basis paragraph. You remember the reason for a modified opinion? So in case of qualified opinion, my language is in our opinion and to the best of our information and explanation given to us, except for the effects or possible effects. See, tell me, either misstatements you have identified, or you believe you could not obtain evidences, but there can be misstatements. So can I say the language can be except for the effect of misstatement or except for the possible effect of misstatement? It depends upon why are you giving a qualification. So listen to me carefully. In case of qualified opinion, I'm very close to clean opinion. In case of qualified, the language is very close to clean, but there are certain exceptions. There are certain exceptions. Can I say, looking at the language, I understand after clean, the second best situation for a company can be qualified. After clean opinion, the second best situation from a company can be qualified. Because at least in qualified, you are saying everything is true and fair, except these matters. Except these matters. What is the language in adverse opinion? Do you know the language of adverse opinion? Anyone? It's interesting. Look at this. Can you see adverse opinion? Read this. In our opinion, and to the best of our information and explanation given to us, because of the significance of matters discussed where in the basis for adverse opinion section. Do you know the basis paragraph? Because of the significance of matters discussed in the basis for adverse opinion section, the financial statements do not give a true and fair view. Look at the language. See, in clean opinion, I said the financial statement gives true and fair. In qualified also, I say the financial statements gives true and fair except certain matters. In adverse, I clearly mention that the financial statements do not give a true and fair. Can I say the best situation for a company is clean opinion? The second most logical one for them can be qualified. The third one, which looks to be adverse. You don't know about disclaimer right now. Do you know how disclaimer looks like? That is the best. That is the best. And I'll tell you what, they've asked questions in examination. Draft the opinion paragraph when you're giving a disclaimer. Because there is a difference. No. Read this. We do not express an opinion. Normally, how we start? In our opinion. Nah. We do not express an opinion. The language is so bad that I don't want to give an opinion at all. It looks to be the worst situation from a company point of view. See, try to understand the language. We'll come back and I'll tell you what, this language also you have to remember. In exam, they'll ask you difference between the language of a adverse opinion and disclaimer. You need to know. That is why I've included all examples. All draft examples are kept there. Listen to me once again. Clean opinion. What is the language? Financial statement gives true and fair. Focus on the important words. Financial statement gives true and fair. In qualified, I say financial statements gives true and fair except. In adverse, I say they do not give true and fair. But at least I tell them that this is my opinion. In disclaimer, I say we do not give an opinion at all. And you'll know what? One more thing. Look at this one. You know your introductory paragraph? We have audited the financial statements. Look at the language what you're writing here. We have not even done the audit. We were engaged to audit. This is an extreme case. Only in case of disclaimer you use such language. Otherwise, if I show you qualified, if I show you clean opinion, if I show you adverse, you'll always write, we have audited. Because audit is done. Here I'm saying we were engaged to audit. So disclaimer looks to be the worst possible situation. Now, if you understand these wordings, now when we discuss that table and when we understand the category, you should be able to understand. Let's understand one by one. Go to your table. Let's discuss this one by one and then we'll fill in the blanks. Go to your table. Read nature of matter number A. Read nature of matter number A. The financial statements are materially misstated. Now tell me one thing. If there is a material misstatement in the financial statement, the question is whether it is a pervasive or not. Whether it is a pervasive or not. So assume it is material but not pervasive. Why are you saying it's not pervasive? Sir, it is not falling in any of the criteria so pervasive. Sir, it is not falling in any of the criteria so pervasive. So sir, I understand when a misstatement cannot be pervasive. For example, in case of SpiceJet, they did not make a provision of 74 million. 74 million is a material amount. Not making a provision is a mistake. But this provision will not impact all parts of financial statement. This will impact one part, and that one part, 74 million, is small against a total loss of 10,000 million. You remember yesterday I talked about they made an accumulated loss of 10,000 million. So it is not representing the substantial portion of financial statement. It is a material misstatement. It is not impacting multiple areas. Criteria 1, not fulfilled. Criteria number 2, it impacts one area, but that one area represents substantial portion. Not possible. 74 million is very small from SpiceJet balance sheet. It cannot be a substantial. The total loss itself is 10,000 million. 74 is small against 10,000. Think like this. Can I say it does not represent a substantial? And disclosure related, this is not the problem only. Provision is not related to a disclosure. This is related to accounting. This is related to accounting. So can I say third criteria is not applicable at all? So can I say it does not fall in any of the criterias of pervasive? That is why I say, can I say this kind of misstatement is material but not pervasive? So can I say I will give true and fair except this matter? I'll give true and fair except this matter. So should I give a qualified opinion? Against that, write down qualified opinion. Under column 2, write down qualified opinion. Under column 2, write down qualified opinion. Qualified opinion. Is it clear to you? Is it clear to you? Now let's go to the third column. What is the third column? You have come across a material misstatement. So number A says financial statements are material misstatement. That means there is a material misstatement. You identified that material misstatement. It's a misstatement which you have already detected. You evaluated that. It doesn't look pervasive, so you give a qualified. If you evaluate that misstatement and if it looks pervasive in nature, pervasive means either it's impacting the multiple areas or just one area but which represents a substantial portion or a non-disclosure of a fundamental part of financial statements. Can I say it looks to be pervasive in nature? I cannot give a qualified opinion. I cannot give a qualified because qualified comes when there is no pervasive nature. If there is a pervasive nature, I cannot give qualified. I have only two more options left. Adverse and disclaimer. Remember always. If you have come across material misstatements, if you know that these are the material misstatements, if you have obtained evidences, and if you say it's pervasive, disclaimer cannot come. Disclaimer comes when you are unable to perform your audit. When you are unable to obtain your audit evidences. Disclaimer is so rare that you don't want to give an opinion because you cannot give an opinion. And when you cannot give an opinion, when you don't have evidences at all. That is why adverse looks to be the only option for you. So do one thing, go to that table. In the third column, write down adverse. Why adverse? Because qualified is not possible. Because qualified is not possible. Because it is a pervasive nature misstatement. And so disclaimer is also not possible. Because disclaimer comes when you are unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit. Here you have evidences. You have found that misstatement. You have evaluated that misstatement. And in your judgment, it is pervasive in nature. So you want to say that the entire financial statements are not true and fair. So that means you want to go ahead with which opinion, sir? Adverse opinion. It's a modified category number 2 that is called as adverse. Is point number A, qualified and adverse, clear to you? Is point number A qualified and adverse clear to you? Can we go to point number B now? Let's go to point number B. What is point number B? When you are unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences. Let me show you one example. Try to understand that example. Probably you will be able to understand this better. See, number A is easy because you have a misstatement. Number B is a challenging one because you don't even know whether there's a misstatement or not. Number B is a possible misstatement situation. Number B is a possible misstatement situation. So let me show you some example. This is an example given by ICAI, and I'll tell you why. Very rare examples of adverse and disclaimer are available to us. Yes, I can show you some situation. For example, DHFL, Diwan Housing Finance Limited. Last year, they've given a disclaimer. The problem with that is, even if I open the report, to make you understand the reason for disclaimer, I will take at least 5 to 7 days. Why? Because you don't even know what NBFC does, number one. In that category of NBFC, what kind of uncertainties they are facing, that is number two. Number three, you should know the history of DHFL first. I'm trying to say, these are extremely rare cases. And to actually understand those cases, you need to be part of those cases. Because just think about this. I am going to tell my users, don't rely on these numbers. Either they are not true and fair, or I'm going to say, I do not have sufficient evidence to come to an opinion. That means I'm talking about really extreme situations. You need to be very careful. But let me show you a simple example which you can actually understand. A very simple example. See, disclaimer. In disclaimer, you know the basis paragraph you always have? Remember the basis for modified opinion paragraph? They've given you some example. The group's investment. So when I talk about the group's investment, technically keep in mind that we are doing the audit of a CFS. You know, CFS and SFS. Do we have separate audit report for CFS and SFS? You know, CFS, consolidated financial statements. SFS is standalone. Do we have separate audit reports or one single report? Do we have separate audit reports for CFS and SFS or one single report? One single report, no? We have separate audit reports. Do you know CFS? I'm asking. Basics? Is your FR done? Sure? Okay, let's try. The group's investment in its joint venture, XYZ, is carried at, let's say, X value. So, there is a joint venture. The value is X on the group's consolidated balance sheet. So, see, in my balance sheet, as a parent entity, there's a joint venture valuation which is hitting my balance sheet. Look at this. Which represents, the joint venture represents how much, sir? 90% of group's net assets. Can I say this? I'm talking about a substantial portion of financial statement. They've clearly mentioned that on my balance sheet, there is one joint venture line item which is more than 90% of my overall net assets. Now go ahead. We are not allowed to access to the management and auditors of X, that joint venture company, whose numbers are included on my balance sheet. I do not have access to that joint ventures management. I do not have access to the entity altogether. I cannot access their books of accounts. Can I say I'm unable to obtain audit evidences? And can I say I'm unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences? And listen to me carefully. I'm unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences regarding a line item which represents a substantial portion of my financial statement. So I'm saying, when I'm unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences, there can be a possible misstatement. And that possible misstatement looks pervasive in nature. Why pervasive? Because it represents more than 90% of my net assets. Are you getting my point? So the first point was, I do not have sufficient and appropriate audit evidences. This is the problem. Can I say my point number B fulfills? Go to point number B. Module, notebooks. Can you see point number B? What is point number B? Auditor is unable to obtain sufficient and... So I understand. This example looks to be in this category. And here they have clearly mentioned that we do not have access to any books of accounts, to the management. We do not have any information. And the amount involved is over 90% of my net assets. Can I say I'm going to pervasive criteria number 2? I'm going to pervasive definition criteria number 2. Read the criteria number 2. Go once again. Although it is confined to one single area or element, but which can represent the substantial. Can I say it is falling in the category of pervasive? In this case, I cannot give an opinion. This is an extreme case. If more than 90% there is an element and I do not have a comfort over that, how can I say that everything looks true and fair except? It's not possible. I cannot give a qualified. Rather, I cannot even give adverse because I don't have evidences only. How should I say it is not true and fair? I want to say I don't want to give an opinion. Can I say this looks to be the classic case of disclaimer? This looks to be the classic case of disclaimer when you are unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences, and that is pervasive in nature. That is pervasive in nature. So do one thing in your table with point number B, go to third column. With point number B, go to third column, not the second column. Why third column? Because third column is material as well as pervasive. Write down disclaimer of opinion. In that third column, write down disclaimer of opinion. Disclaimer of opinion. Done. With the word disclaimer in brackets, you can mention disclaimer of opinion in brackets. Write down when there is a restriction on. When there is a restriction on auditor's scope. When there is a restriction on auditor's scope of audit. When there is a restriction on auditor's scope of audit. Tell me one thing, in this situation, I would have wanted to obtain information regarding this joint venture. Are they restricting my scope? Yes. This joint venture was coming in my scope, but they're not allowing me to work on that particular entity. Can I say they are creating a restriction and I cannot arrive at an opinion? So I should give a disclaimer. Is disclaimer clear to you? Is disclaimer clear to you? Now, what is the last situation left? What is the last situation? When you are unable to obtain audit evidences. It is material, but not pervasive. If I say the same situation, joint venture or acquisition by a company. For example, Google, Facebook, Amazon, they keep acquiring companies day in, day out. Like, if I'm not wrong, in 2011 or 12, there was a time, I don't remember the exact time, in 1 month, Google acquired a new company every day. They acquired a new company every day. This Google Assistant, what you use, it's actually acquisition of multiple companies, and they came up with this technology that they can include Google Assistant in your mobile phone or a smartphone. Like the way Apple created Siri long back, which still doesn't understand our language. But Google Assistant does. Are you getting my point? So I'm trying to say, these companies keeps on acquiring a lot of companies. Now, when I acquire as a Google some company, that acquisition generally may not be a substantial part of my balance sheet. But that acquisition is still an important transaction. It's still a material transaction, but it will not fall in the category of pervasive. It will not fall in the category of pervasive. So acquire a company and the books of accounts of that company is not available. Because when Google acquires a company, they don't think about the auditor, they think about the business. They always see that there are 4 people in Hyderabad, they created a technology which can actually help building our product better. I will acquire the company. Doesn't matter what those 4 people are doing as of now. I like the product. So maybe the basic history of that new company might not be available. The basic information may not be available. It's a very common problem that maybe certain you make acquisitions and the acquisition entities financial statements may not be prepared at all, or they may be prepared on a single entry basis because those businesses were not planning to become big businesses. They were individual, startups. We acquire startups as a tech company. I'm talking about Google, Facebook. We acquire those startups. And when we acquire those startups, we don't look at their audited financial statement. We look at their product. If I like the product, if I like the technology, I will pick them up. Their financial statements will anyways become part of my financial statements eventually. So for the first year, it can be a problem. When you acquire a company, the information is not available, but the acquisition amount is material, but not pervasive in terms of my entire financial statements. So I can say there are situations where auditor may not get right valuations or valuation reports or right information regarding the acquisitions made by the company. But here the question will be the amount of acquisition, the method used for valuation, the method used for accounting. Do you remember corporate, corporate restructuring as a chapter? You have your mergers and acquisitions, basically. The accounting treatment. Maybe the accounting treatment, the calculation of purchase consideration is not done appropriately. It might be a misstatement, and you believe, since I don't have the information, it looks to be a possible misstatement. But I believe the amount involved of the acquisition is not that substantial that I consider that as a pervasive nature. Let me show you another example. Probably you will understand. Qualified opinion. Look at the example. Qualified. Last one, I won't trouble you more. The group's investment. Now this time, be careful. That time it was a joint venture, which represented over 90% of my net assets. Now this time it's an investment in XYZ. It's a foreign associate acquired during the year and accounted by the equity method and carried at this value. The ABC share of XYZ's net income is included. So basically the company which I acquired, their overall income, my share in that income is included in my financial statements. That means acquisition is done. Acquisition is done. Values are merged. Their share of income is getting reflected in my financial statement. So everything is at place. But the problem is I don't have information. Look at this. We are unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences about the carrying amount of ABC's investment in XYZ. Like for example, you are saying, I acquired this company for a value of 10,000 crore rupees. I don't know how did you arrive at 10,000 crore rupees. For a Walmart, 10,000 crore can be immaterial. Are you getting my point? For a Walmart, 10,000 crore will be immaterial. But 10,000 still individually is an important transaction. It is not becoming a substantial part of your financial statement, but still it's a very important transaction. And I cannot understand that transaction. Why? Because the evidences for that transaction is not available. So I'm trying to say one transaction or an acquisition made by the company during the year for which the information is vague, not clearly available, but that transaction is not a huge part of my financial statement. Remember the difference between a qualified and disclaimer. Remember, the difference between qualified and disclaimer is going to be whether it is pervasive or not. It's going to be whether it is pervasive or not. If I'm unable to obtain evidences, which is material, but doesn't look to be pervasive in nature, I can still give a qualified. If it looks pervasive in nature, I cannot think about qualified because I cannot come to a conclusion at all. That is when I give a disclaimer. So in your table, the last empty column, that is point number B, column number 2. Point number B, column number 2. Write down qualified opinion. Point number B, column number 2. Write down qualified opinion. This is extremely rare, I'll tell you honestly, because for a transaction, there are different ways of acquiring information. Some way or the other, we will find audit evidences at any given way. And normally this can be avoided because management will try to provide you information. Management will try to provide you, more assurance so that you are in a comfortable position. Disclaimer, if it's there, it's there. Even management cannot do anything about it. For example, DHFL, there is nothing wrong, but everything is wrong. There's nothing wrong from the management point of view. From the company point of view, everything is gone. There is no certainty. Everything is uncertain. So in that case, even management doesn't have evidences. How can they provide you or not provide you evidences? So those extreme cases, we cannot do anything. Rather, disclaimer also comes under one situation, which is given very, very extremely. Listen to me. I have evidences. I have obtained all sufficient and appropriate audit evidences. But still I cannot come to an opinion. Listen to me. I have obtained all sufficient and appropriate audit evidences. Still, I cannot come to an opinion. Why? Because there is so much uncertainty involved in this company that although I can see everything, but I still believe I cannot see anything. Like for example, I don't know when will this company fall. I don't know how much assets the company will be able to recover. Like for example, bankruptcy code. So when eventually the situation like Rico India or RCom right now or all these companies which are falling, when you go for monetization of your assets, you want to sell your assets, get the money. You don't know how much money you will get. Like for example, when Idea falls, if Idea falls, I don't want it to fall. Honestly, I'll tell you, I love Idea. The reason being, People actually, I know, bought Idea share at 100 rupees once upon a time. You know what? There is actually a, you can say, irony of life. They reduce your call rates. You saved 1,000 rupees per month. But India lost X 100 crore rupees in Idea shares. The value of the company, it's a listed company. The money involved belong to people. Are you getting my point? For example, a lot of people bought Idea at 100 rupees, 150 rupees, 120 rupees. The value of the share is right now, you know how much? 3 or 4 rupees approximately. 95% or 96% value is lost by our country. And majority of that belong to us. So although we saved 1,000 rupees per month, but we lost far more money in that one stock. It's not just me, the entire country. And I'll tell you what, if Idea falls, the biggest loser is going to be SBI Bank. Financial institution which gives loans. Are you getting my point? That is when there is one bad news on Idea. More than Idea, SBI starts falling. Because people know they will also, SBI is the strongest, PSU bank right now in our country. They're doing very, very good. Very, very good. But every bank has exposure. This is one of their biggest exposure. So, it's like a situation. If government does something, it's a problem. Doesn't do something, it's a problem. Are you getting my point? Rather, LIC. Why people keep saying, now there is a problem. People say whether it should become they're going for IPO. So whether it should become a public entity or not, whether they should go for an IPO or not. There are multiple theories behind this. And you need to read articles for that. And more you read and you'll realize, think about the auditor who signs on those reports. What that guy must be thinking, because he is actually making a remark for all the users. For that auditor, it's so challenging. Think about the person who signed on the Idea report. Even he doesn't know what will happen. There is so much uncertainty. DHFL report. There are people who sign, obviously. These are still listed companies. I hope you're getting my point. Think about Anil Ambani's auditor, man. So many companies. It's always a challenge. It's not that there is a material misstatement. But now, no misstatement can be material now. There's nothing left in the company, I mean to say that. Do you understand 4 situations? Sure. There can be one rare situation. Let me talk about this last time. You have all evidences, but still in the company's business, in the company's environment, there are so many uncertainties that although everything is available to you, you still cannot conclude confidently that it gives true and fair, because I don't know what will go wrong because of these uncertainties. So in these extreme cases, I still give a disclaimer. Why? Although management has provided me all the evidences, but I believe there are so many uncertainties around this company, around this business, that I still cannot come to an opinion. And I will have to give reasons. And the reason will not be that I'm unable to obtain evidence. The reason will be uncertainty number 1. Uncertainty number 2. These are the situations because of which I cannot say whether it is true and fair or not true and fair. I cannot say any of them. That is why I go to which opinion? Disclaimer. Because in disclaimer, what do I say? I do not express an opinion. I don't say true or fair or not true and fair. I say I don't want to give an opinion. That's the extreme case. It is possible. Are we good? Now from exam point of view, either in MCQ or for a 2-mark question, they can ask you definitions. Definition of a qualified opinion, definition of a adverse opinion. Now let's do one thing. We'll go and read the definition, and trust me, it is very simple. If you understand whatever I've given you as of now, if you understand the table clearly, your definition is just a cakewalk. It's very, very simple. Let's look at the definitions. Let's look at the adverse opinion definition, the most difficult one. Everyone. The auditor shall express an adverse opinion when, having obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidences, he concludes that misstatements either individually or in aggregate are both material and, that is the only situation we have adverse. Can I say this is the simplest possible definition what they can ask you? You don't have to remember it at all. If you understand that table, you can write down this definition very, very easily. Now tell me, qualified can come in 2 circumstances. Either when you come across a material misstatement, which is either individually material or in aggregate material, it is material but not pervasive. Or number 2, you are unable to obtain audit evidences, which is material but not pervasive. Read the qualified definition. It's very, very simple. You don't have to worry at all. Obtained evidences, unable to obtain audit evidences. The effect, possible effect. Material, not pervasive. Material, not pervasive. The table itself will give you the answer. Table itself will give you the answer. No need to worry. The difficult one, disclaimer. Now read that with me. The auditor shall disclaim only in one circumstances, when he is unable to obtain what, sir? Sufficient and appropriate, on which to base his opinion. And he concludes that the possible, why the word possible? Because in this case, you don't have a misstatement. So there can be a possible effect of misstatement on financial statement, which can be both material as well as pervasive. So this much we can write very easily. Now read the second paragraph with me, which is very careful. A lot of people don't read this. They leave that as an option. Read. The auditor shall disclaim an opinion in extremely rare circumstances involving multiple uncertainties. Now listen to me carefully. You remember the extreme situation I was talking about? Although you have evidences, but you still cannot conclude. Read that. The auditor concludes that notwithstanding having obtained audit evidences, although he has obtained audit evidences, which is sufficient and appropriate, he still believes there are so many individual uncertainties, it is not possible to form an opinion on these financial statements. Why? Due to potential interaction of uncertainties. How these uncertainties can impact multiple areas. And maybe I have evidences, but I still believe my conclusion can very easily go wrong. Because there are so many uncertainties around this business. I don't know about the going concern of this business. I don't know whether they will be able to recover money by selling their assets. I don't know whether they will be able to raise money from other people. Like for example, Yes Bank. You know Yes Bank? Like it used to be one of the most, favorable private bank stocks in India. The stock used to be at 400 rupees once upon a time. It's at 35 rupees today. Like last 1.5 years, the companies where people lost a lot of money. One is Idea, second is DHFL, third is Yes Bank. Like where everything was so good till once upon a time, and suddenly overnight things started falling. In Yes Bank, what happened? One guy who started the company, Rana Kapoor. Do you know the guy Rana Kapoor? He's the founder, one of the founders of Yes Bank. It was found by the RBI that the Rana Kapoor is trying to provide, window dressing? Is trying to do window dressing, showing a better position, showing a better growth of the Yes Bank in comparison to other private banks. So Rana Kapoor started RBI started an investigation against Rana Kapoor as soon as this news broke out. And it's simple. If I'm an investor, if regulator is questioning the founder, there can be something wrong. Do you get my point? There can be. It started falling from 400 rupees. From 400 to 300, 250, 200, 160. Think about the amount of money people lost. It holded at 160. But now the problem with Yes Bank is, Rana Kapoor is gone. He's removed. So, cleaning done. Bank is clean. There's a new CEO on board. He's a very good guy. The problem is, there's no money. So even a banking company needs a lot of working capital to show growth in their business. Bank is still working. But the problem is, there's no working capital. They need money desperately. And they have been needing money for last 6 months. And every 1 month they come up with a plan. This will put money, this will put money, this will put money. No one has put money as of now. If no one puts money, I'll tell you what RBI will do. Sell it to SBI. The value is still 30 rupees. Are you getting my point? Something which was worth 400 rupees is less than 40 rupees today. So something which was worth 100 rupees, you're getting for what? 10 bucks. And it's a private bank. Superiority of SBI. SBI acquired a private bank, which is doing very good right now. But this is a landmark thing for a situation. I don't want them to do this. But I'm trying to tell you, if nothing works out, that's how the outcomes will change. And anyways, our government likes consolidation. I hope you know what is. Like a lot of entities are clubbed with SBI, PNB, all of them. Disclaimer can come even in a situation when you have evidences, but you still believe that there are so many uncertainties involved that I cannot really come to a conclusion. It's a rare situation, but even this can be there. Do one thing in your notebooks, write down note number 2, the last note. Note number 1 was your definition of pervasive. Write down note number 2. Disclaimer of opinion. Disclaimer of opinion. Disclaimer of opinion can be given when auditor concludes. Can be given when auditor concludes. When auditor concludes that notwithstanding. When auditor concludes that notwithstanding the sufficient and appropriate audit evidence is obtained, notwithstanding the sufficient and appropriate audit evidence is obtained regarding sufficient and appropriate audit evidence is obtained regarding each individual uncertainty. Sufficient and appropriate audit evidence obtained regarding each individual uncertainty, comma, he is still unable to form an opinion. He is still unable to form an opinion due to potential interactions. He is still unable to form an opinion due to potential interactions between these uncertainties. Potential interactions between these uncertainties and their possible cumulative effect. And their possible cumulative effect. And their possible cumulative effect on entities' financial statements. And their possible cumulative effect on entities' financial statements. On entities' financial statements. In brackets mention, it is a rare situation. It is a rare situation. It is a rare situation. Listen to me for last time. There are uncertainties in business. Individually, when you deal with them, you have evidences. I obtained those evidences for individual uncertainties. But I still believe there are so many of them that if I actually sit on a piece of paper and trying to see the cumulative effect of all of them which can come, there is so many permutation combination, which is possible. I believe I cannot come to an opinion. What if company is unable to get investments? What if company is unable to recover money by selling their assets? What if lenders start pressurizing the company? What if, shareholders start filing cases against the company? What if management resigns? What if, central government doesn't do anything about it? There are so many uncertainties involved. I believe when I look at them individually, they make sense. But cumulatively, ultimately, my opinion is not on one part of financial statement. My opinion is on entire financial statement. So cumulative impact looks to be very, very bad. And I cannot predict that. That is why I'm saying I cannot arrive at a conclusion. Although evidences are available from individual perspective, but on an aggregate level, I'm still not comfortable. That is why I want to give a disclaimer. This is a rare situation. Although auditor might have received all possible evidences, but he is still not comfortable. These kind of situations becomes the toughest possible MCQs, because everyone know that disclaimer comes under only one situation: when you are unable to obtain evidences. This time they will write you are able to obtain evidences, but the uncertainties involved are so significant that the possible effect is not something which is understandable, which you cannot really understand. Do you get my point? Are you sure? With 705 types of modifications done, Individually, each type definition done. What kind of modification will come under what circumstances done? Is it good? Note number 3. Don't break. Okay, note number 3. Then I'll give you a break. Arey, just note number 3. Note number 3. Before modifying his opinion, before modifying his opinion, auditor should communicate. Before modifying his opinion, auditor should communicate his findings. Auditor should communicate his findings to those charged with governance. Auditor should communicate his findings to those charged with governance and management. Auditor should communicate his findings to those charged with governance and management. Communicate his findings to those charged with governance and management and provide them a reasonable opportunity. Provide them a reasonable opportunity and provide them a reasonable opportunity to either make adjustments or disclosures. Provide them a reasonable opportunity to either make adjustments or disclosures. Do you understand this last point? This is very, very important. Can you do this? I have come across misstatements. I prepare a modified report and I give it to management. Surprise. No, it's not allowed. Whatever finding you have, it's your duty to first communicate to management and there is a difference between management and TCWG. I'll explain you afterwards. Right now, you need to communicate to management and TCWG here replace in your head with the word audit committee. In India, TCWG is audit committee. So you need to communicate these findings to management and audit committee. Give them an opportunity that this looks to be a misstatement. For example, I believe you did not make appropriate provision. Make appropriate provision. If they make appropriate provision, I can still give a clean opinion. If they do not agree with me, then I have to go towards the modified opinion. Do you understand this? Is note number 3 clear to you? Are we good? We'll continue after the break. Thank you.